Okay, it is 6 o'clock. The meeting will come to order of the School Building Committee. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I know Melissa circulated them. Does anybody have any discussion, questions, changes? Motion by Al. Second by Kevin. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, unanimous approval. Second item on the agenda is a minutes recorder. We need to have a minutes recorder. I'm going to suggest that we use Melissa, who has done this before. The going rate that she's been receiving is just about $300 per meeting. She does the minutes, the email, the filing, the retrieval from filing, and everything else that you could possibly imagine as far as keeping this thing going.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to make Melissa Bullock the recorder of the committee.
Melissa Bullock.
Second.
Okay, second?
Melissa Bullock.
Did I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mitch Rossetti. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, unanimous. You got the job, Melissa. Okay. Yes, sir.
Is the rate posted or done by the...
I asked her about it. It's the same rate that...
It's the rate we use at the school.
School department.
So the personnel boards approve the rate?
I would say it's been the practice of the school.
I don't think that covers, I don't think that's under the Personnel Board Article 2. I don't
And
recall.
should we include approval of the rate?
That was in Jonathan's description, and we did a motion based on that.
It was in the motion.
Yeah,
It was in
I'm
the
okay
motion.
with it, but I'll leave it up to the...
In the minutes, you'll put exactly what it is. It's 307 or something? Okay.
$307.40.
Okay, per meeting. Okay. The third item on the agenda is the introduction of the consultant. At our last meeting, we talked about and we unanimously voted to engage the services of outside consultant to get us through the eligibility period to the feasibility period. I had mentioned the name at the time was James Riefstahl. There's the guy you hired. And James, tell us about yourself, please.
Oh, thank you. So yes, I'm James Riefstahl. I'm the SL OPM, Owners Project Management, and I've known Jonathan and Rick and Kevin since Woodland Elementary. So I was the Owners Project Manager with a different company at that time. What was it, 2016, 8 years ago when we finished it, and it's usually about a 6-year process, 6-7-year process, depending, these projects take from the MSBA. So I've been continuously working with MSBA since Woodland, to let you know, and I've had 5 core projects and about 25 accelerated repair projects. Just this morning, Next Level was actually, there's every 2 months. It's a bi-monthly with the MSBA. They have a board of directors meeting, and for one of their programs, Next Level was chosen as one of their pool of OPMs to be shepherding their accelerated repair programs. And but what I wanted to really focus on, because when I'm in front of other clients and you guys, we're usually a little bit farther down the line as an OPM. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity that I can get in front of you guys and hopefully answer some questions. Go ahead.
I'm just going to interrupt. Are you going to jump right into D? Are you still? We had 2 items. They had the introduction.
Yes.
And it was intended to transition directly into the MSBA
Correct.
general conditions guidelines for reimbursable projects. So right now we're on D.
That's right.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
No problem. Who are you in a relationship with now? That's basically where we're at. Who is the MSBA? What power do they have over this project? What do they not have? And that's where I want to hopefully clarify some of those items for you tonight. And so the way the MSBA is funded is they get 1 penny out of every one of the state's sales tax, 6.25%. That's how it gets funded every year. And they need to distribute that over the 300 plus districts throughout the state. And so what I want to stress is I've heard rumors about Fieldhouse, which is quite appropriate. It's a 50-year investment, plus you're about to embark upon. So, lots of people want a Fieldhouse. Makes a lot of sense. The MSBA, however, they are academics first. In any of their decisions, it's academics first, everything else second. So athletics, that includes athletics, that includes drama, that includes auditoriums. Those are all secondary in their minds. If I can stress anything, it's the MSBA has a set amount of funds, and so they've chosen to focus on the academics, and if you want more than that, then the district may do so at their own expense. And so, if you want to build the Taj Mahal of a field house or a stadium, whatever, you may do so, but that's not going to be on taxpayer dimes. But you are going to get all your classrooms, all your cafeterias, all the stuff for academics that you need to run a program. So,
Are there any negative ramifications for add-ons that we pay for?
no, except that,
Well,
Yeah.
we have to pay for it.
that's right.
So,
That's right.
I think the better question is, can we, assuming this ends up being a renovation of 31 West Fountain Street, and we'll get that through this eligibility period feasibility study, that's when that'll be determined. Assuming it ends up at 31 West Fountain Street, understand the geography of the town, can we build a field house at our cost concurrent with this project?
That's a good question. I don't know that if they can be concurrent. I don't think they would smile upon you hiring the same architect and hiring the same CM and, doing that separately and
Because
concurrently.
it's difficult to distinguish what went where.
Yes.
So I guess like from a practical standpoint, if I can through the chair, we can't use any of those supplemental projects as match for any of the funding or any of that, right? I mean, we can't include that as part of what we're contributing towards the overall project,
What do you mean supplemental projects?
like the field house.
I guess what I'd ask is, let's put this on the agenda for the next meeting. I mean, we're still in eligibility period,
Yeah.
so rather than get bogged down
Yeah.
with what we can do and what we can't do, that certainly fits into feasibility, but as far as clarification, this is the sort of question that we would like to at least have some guidance on for the next meeting. So,
And so, just very, good to see you. Very, very briefly, not to go into the details of it, in your opinion and what you've observed over your interaction with the MSBA over the past number of years, you used the term Taj Mahal building, right? Do you think, has it been your experience that proposing or wanting a Taj Mahal building, meaning a building with lots of extras, tends to reflect negatively upon the people who are making the decision which project has priority?
Not to which project that has priority. You're already in the pipeline.
Yeah, I understand that.
That doesn't matter. So, in terms of priority, now, I think it really comes back to, as it was explained to me, because I asked the MSBA this question directly, they know that this is going to eventually go to the taxpayers. And so, when you have folks on limited incomes, do they want to pay the additional X amount of dollars, 10 million plus for a field house? And so they will make you, as it was explained to me, they will have you study what the school would look like, a solution without a field house, and what that cost would be, and what the solution would be like with the field house, and what that cost would be. So they try to be very transparent. In fact, I'm going to belabor that point, because you've been through this process before, you're jumping a little bit ahead. The MSBA wants us to be very careful when we go through this feasibility and schematic design, when you get us, when we get the OPM and the architect on board, they're going to have you study, part of the program is you study what's called the building code upgrade. In other words, it's an academic exercise, but what would it cost to get the existing building up to code? It's more or less getting a cost baseline. You're going to study additions and renovations, and you're going to study what a new building is. Those are automatic 3, and then there can be variations of that. Expect that from the architect. And you guys are going to see that as a building committee, and then choose, okay, we've seen the cost and the pros and cons of this option, cost, pros and cons of that option, and then you're going to filter those down until you choose one preferred schematic option.
and if I may, that presupposes there's a place to put a new school.
That's exactly right. In other districts, we've studied, we've spent a lot of time, well, what a new school look like in this location, what would a new school like in that one? As I've been told, you guys have already looked around the district. It doesn't just.
Well, we went through this just about a decade ago, feasibility study to build a 1,000-square-foot elementary school, and we ended up right back on North Vine Street.
And that's not
And this is a bigger facility that we're talking about, so with, obviously, we have to go through the process, but I'd be hard-pressed to find any place else to put it in town that's already open land, and we're not going to, I presume we're not going down the eminent domain road to take people's homes to build a school. So that forces you right back to 31
You think that'd be
West Fountain.
unpopular, Jonathan?
I don't think that's a good plan, but that, again, drives us right back to 31 West Fountain Street, some way, shape, or form. As far as what you get to build, and I have the luxury of having seen these slides already, I know he's going to talk about what our limitations are going to be. So let's keep going.
Yes. And just traditionally, like he's alluding to, what my experience is, just like in Woodland, we build, everyone's got nice fields, empty fields, so you build on the field while you keep the existing school going. That's opened up, you tear down the existing school, so where do you put 1,000 kids when you're building a new school? So the worst case scenario is if you have to, tear down the existing school and build in the same exact location. Unfortunately, my boys are in Watertown, and that's just, they didn't have another place, and so they built a 2-story modular right across from the middle school.
10 years before Woodland, that's exactly what we did with Brookside. Yeah. We vacated Brookside and completely renovated it, and it was a struggle finding where we're going to put the students. But we did it. But again, you were talking about a much smaller school. So I think, without belaboring this point, we're going to be 31 West Fountain Street. The question is where. When we did Woodland, we did not have modern fields, so it was very evident. You go where the old fields were, build a new school, put fields where the school used to be. The high school, we have basically a brand-new field complex, so I can't imagine the cost to demo that, to put a school there. But the question remains, is there room in the back? I don't know, but that's part of feasibility study. And we'll get to there after eligibility period, which, just to put a quick timeline on it, the target date is the June 2025 MSBA meeting to be done with eligibility the eligibility period and into feasibility. That's our goal, and it's going to come up faster than you believe.
Kevin and Josh are going to provide an update after I.
Okay, so if you could continue.
Yeah. This is interesting. Well, as far as I'm concerned, we all consider the MSBA a grant reimbursement program, right? They give us money for it. What they really are, though, as well, is that first bullet. That they give guidelines for school program and area, size of classrooms, size of the cafeteria. You don't, so that, They say a classroom size should typically be between 850 and 925 square feet for high school. All science labs, especially high school, need to meet the OSHA standard of 1440, 1,440 square feet. So these set building blocks. Now, how you have them in adjacencies, in what's next to what, that's up to you. But the size of those. So in that case, they really are putting their fingerprint on the schools in Massachusetts across the state, and in terms of sizing. And one thing that I was stressing, I had a previous conversation with Josh and Kevin, and you guys are already aware of this. But one thing they also stress is they prefer to see, they don't like unused space. And so they prefer to see classrooms utilized 85% minimum of the day. Also, what does that mean? All of us growing up, the teachers sat in the classroom. That was their office, and that was also their classroom. That was so there would be a period for them to do their planning, and maybe another period for tutoring or who knows what. But there'd be those downtimes like that. And with the MSBA, it's really changing the culture of school. So now you can have rooms that are shared by teachers. And the teachers go to a planning room, so they have a separate location where they'll be planning their materials. But so it's no longer that's just Ms. Johnson's class, whatever. That's that room, and we have the majority of English there, but sometimes Spanish sneaks in too. Whatever as the schedule fits. So spaces they're The MSBA is reimbursing you on space, on square footage, on area. And so they want to maximize their reimbursement, and that is therefore, they're getting into like how you manage your school and how you run your school. Just wanted to let you know that.
Excuse me.
Now,
How do they look at, like Milford High? My understanding is if we built it today, square footage per student would be smaller.
It could be. I haven't studied that yet. I'll
Let's say we have more geography per student.
Yes.
Do they take that into consideration when they're evaluating our new design?
Yes, so there's a couple of options here, right? Already, we're discussing, you have a current 9 through 12, and we're thinking of adding 8 through 12, so that's changing variables. We're even going to 7 through 12, which would be potentially another conversation.
we're going to get there.
Yeah. But then you're also thinking, well, you're doing a brand new school, or are you renovating the existing? And so if you're renovating the existing, they'll put a cap on, like, say if it was new construction and that was a smaller value, well, then they're going to reimburse you up to that level of what it was in new construction. You know, so you'll reimburse the whole space, you'll renovate the whole space, I should say, but 309? So you have 309,000 square feet?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
39,000 square feet.
39,000?
No, 309,000. It's a big school. And it is a big school, just for comparison-wise. The Woodland was 139,000 square feet, I think. Yeah, it's a big school. So, say the new school was 250,000 square feet. You know, they'll still let you renovate, but they're only going to reimburse, say, up to what they would pay for if it was a new school. If that
So
makes
if we
sense.
kept the 309 footprint,
Yeah,
we may only get reimbursed to renovate 250.
that's right. 250,000. That's basically the way it would work. Yeah.
Dollar value for 250,000.
The one thing
You're going to compare new 250 versus renovate 300. They're only going to go up to new 250, whatever that includes to
Yes.
what you renovate out of the 300. So it's conceivable that you could complete all your renovations for that amount because it's an existing building. You just don't know.
Not only that, Joe, but using Woodland as the example, we were reimbursed for new construction and demolition. So there's the other side of that. But the one thing that was the biggest eye-opener to me, I think it was 2013 when I landed on the Woodland Building Committee, is we have very little to say about this. We're going to be told who can manage it, who can design it, what it will be, who can build it, what your classroom configurations are. We get to nibble around the edges and to try to tailor it to the needs of the town of Milford as best we can. There's not a lot of latitude here.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, because when we built Woodland, I was on the school committee. And as you know, when we turned the key the first day, the school was already at max.
Correct. It was overcrowded the day it
It was built to
opened.
1,198 students. And I said at a meeting one night, this makes no sense at all.
Right.
And Bob Tremblay was the superintendent at the time, said, we have no choice.
Right.
They tell us what that school's going to be.
And that's something that we're going to be looking to Kevin and Josh and James to, and we're going to talk about this later on, after eligibility period, scheduled deliverables, and maybe I'll flip the agenda item. The school grade configuration is going to be super critical here. And what programming will occur there, whether it's going to be what we're used to, or what we've seen, or whether it'll be a comprehensive school. And Josh will talk about bringing Chapter 74 programming in, which is vocational trades, which up until recently we weren't allowed to. And how that plays in. But I want to keep moving this along. I know there's a lot of questions. A lot of these are very much expected. They are more feasibility study oriented. We need to get through eligibility period, and there's some real critical tasks that are very time sensitive and not easy to get through.
But Jonathan, when you say 7th and 8th grade is a possibility,
That's what we're going to talk
do
about.
they
that.
decide that, or do we?
School department does.
And SBA decides if they'll fund it?
We're going to get there.
Okay.
I think a lot of these questions are probably going to be addressed in James's presentation.
Eventually, yes.
Okay. Please continue.
But yes, critical, so one thing to leave you guys with, the space summary template, literally, it's based upon the design enrollment. And that's the critical piece that we're all discussing now.
Right.
And Kevin and Josh will share more details later about the discussions and how Milford's unique. But literally, the first thing you do in that spreadsheet is you punch in, how many per grade, and then it magically spits out, okay, 40 classrooms, 10 art classrooms, 4 art classrooms, the PE, the cafeteria size. It's all based on that design enrollment. And then it conversely translates into the square footage.
And one of the problems with design enrollment is the model does not work in Milford.
Right.
The model is based primarily on, correct me if I'm wrong, birth rate, new construction rate. And that's why the day Woodland opened, it was overcrowded. The model just simply doesn't work here. And we need to deal with MSBA from that perspective to demonstrate historically what is happening in the town of Milford. And for those of you who may not know, the town right now is sitting on 4 40B applications, which are talking about 500 more apartments. I don't know what that translates into students, but it's something we need to be aware of and MSBA needs to be aware of.
Why, if I can, why
Sure.
is MSBA not aware of that? They build other schools in communities that are similar to us, like Marlboro and places like
We
that.
apparently are an outlier.
That's hard.
Maybe.
That's all, the only way we can answer
You
it.
get into that?
The way the
But
40B
John,
structure has to do with the ages of the housing, so a lot of the housing that we have that's multifamily housing doesn't count.
No, I'm not talking about 40B, I'm talking about MSBA's
well,
calculation.
we're going to get
We
there.
will get there. It's a ballot, and we'll explain it.
Well, I can't explain why it doesn't work, but we know it doesn't work. And that's part of what Josh will talk about.
And all this is, you're not expected to read this. I just wanted you to see the yellow and blue. This is that space summary template. And, where, non-program spaces, program spaces are above. You'll have your existing conditions and then proposed program. Variations to MSBA guidelines, so they're tracking. If there's variations to that where you're over, hey, there's a magical, calculates, there's 5,000 square feet you're over. That's great. We're not going to reimburse you on that 5,000 square feet. So this is how they're keeping track of everything. So just want to let you guys be aware of the mechanics of what's going on. I look at it this way, we all have different tax experiences, but at least when you're doing your taxes, you're starting off with, but you can look and say, I'm in the 24th percentile bracket, and do that simple math, and then hopefully you get a bunch of credits, and you get back more than what you may have expected to pay. It's kind of the opposite. Think of it that way. You're starting off with a reimbursement rate, and then you're going to get hit with all this, okay, and then we're going to take a little bit from here, take a little bit from here, take a little. So your net reimbursement could be half, 20 points lower.
Well, going back to Woodland again, the reimbursement rate was 59%, I think. I think it was about 59 and a fraction percent. It netted out about 50%.
Right.
So, and various things kicked in. For example, at that, and I know it's different now, at that time, you were allowed 8% for site work. Didn't matter what the site work cost. 8% of your total package was allowable for site work. Everything beyond that was excluded from reimbursement.
Right.
All right, so this, and James, I know he's got a slide on this. Let's,
Yeah.
again, so again.
But an interesting point that I think you guys would like to hear is, don't think, they always say they're, items are eligible for reimbursement. Well, you would think this room, how fancy is it to you? Aside from the cameras, whatever, but this would be eligible for reimbursement. You need chairs, you need desks, you need carpet, you need simple paint on the wall. That's not the way they look at it. When you think of eligible, don't think reasonable, don't think everything's gold-plated toilets. Probably a mind frame you could get is you're going to get 80% of the cost of the school you need, just because they have those types of limits on it. And I'll get there. Just real quick, when we get into feasibility, you're going to have 2 years where I've already mentioned you're going to go look through design, you're going to look at choices, and you're going to filter down. PDP is many sites, many configurations. You're going to choose 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever you want to study in the next phase. You further study those, and you finally you conclude with your single preferred option. You're submitting these as reports to the MSBA, where they're reviewing your work, and then they provide comments back. But that space summary is involved. There's cost estimates involved. You have all that. And then finally, once you get that preferred schematic, your single preferred, that's when you keep going with that one option and further flesh it out in schematic design.
And I think it's really safe to say that MSBA does a really good job at this. They really, really do. They understand what's going on. Our issue might have to do with population. That's a different issue. But as far as actually, what do you need for a school? They're really good at this. Really good. And when you go through this and you filter down, you end up with what you should end up with. It needs to be repeated that they know what they're doing, and they do it well.
While it may seem like extra work, what I see it as is that you've looked under every stone, and now you have documentation for all the naysayers, for everyone else in the community. Hey, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? Well, we did study that, and this is where we came out. And we did do that, and this is where it came out. And this is how we arrived at that. So seems like a little bit of extra work or overkill, but when you're going to townspeople and asking for funds, it's helpful in that regard. And one thing, for all of us in the building and construction industry, schematic design, it still seems kind of flexible, up in the air, not in the MSBA. That thing, and here's what, that it is your space size and those adjacencies are locked. You can't be moving, oh, let's put the gym over here. Let's move. No, everything is locked in place. If it isn't, you're going to have a major discussion with the MSBA. And then we're also at schematic design, we're detailing it. The architect is detailing it just enough because that is when the budget is set. So in other projects, we have a contingency, we can go over. Not so in the MSBA world. We have that set, it's 200 million, we're now managing to 200 million. Because we're not going, you can't go back. The MSBA is setting their grant program based on that. You can go over, and you can probably ask the town for more money, but they're not going to contribute. That's all 100%.
Do we still get the option of design, bid, build, and
CMR?
GMP? Okay, so it's a little bit esoteric, but there's two pathways. One is design, bid, build. You design it, you set it out to bid, and you build it. The other is GMP, guaranteed maximum price. We'll talk about that somewhere down the road. Each option has its pluses and minuses. I could probably make a compelling argument for a renovation. You want GMP because of the potential unexpecteds. But there's an argument for design, bid, build. The thing with GMP is you get to pick your contractor. Design, bid, build, you end up with the low bidder.
And we can have typically, if we were hired as OPM, that was another thing too. You're getting a heads up on things that otherwise the OPM would kind of like every month be educating you on.
Yeah.
We would have a presentation for you on the benefits and cost benefits.
We'll go through that. But
design, bid, build, and CM at risk.
What did Woodlands do? What did the elementary do? In terms of
CM at risk.
CM at risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a shock.
GMP. Woodland was GMP. And it worked out really well.
It worked out well.
Okay.
There's just amazing, like with all the projects we've seen. I'll be real quick. There's multiple benefits for CM at risk, but one of them is like, I don't think there's ever really been. It almost feels like every design bid build, the relationship with the GC is contentious at the bend.
Because it's the low bidder.
That's right.
You get the design bid build, you get the low bidder. Your sub-trades are going to be low bidder either way. So your plumbing is going to be low bid, your electric is going to be low bid, your HVAC is going to, the filed sub-trades will be low bidder, but the guy in charge of the whole package, GMP, you get to pick.
How much of a difference is there, though, because it's all prevailing wage?
At the end of the day, I mean, somebody must have done a study, but everybody knows up front what this is going to cost. The issue is going to be the change orders. And my concern in a renovation...
Or how much fighting or contention.
Yeah, how much, right. That's my feeling. So in a GMP bid, you're going to have a design contingency, you're going to have a construction contingency. they have to make it work within those guidelines. If you do design, bid, build, you don't. Hey, here's your change order with unforeseen circumstances. I mean, I could argue the merits of GMP. This is not the correct time to do it. But I think, from the 30,000-foot flyover, everybody gets a vision of MSBA are good people. MSBA has strict requirements. We're going to have options down the road. But again, I can't stress enough, we have to get through eligibility period.
So now we're getting into that second bullet, the reimbursable, how they're a grant program. There are non-starters, and there's an asterisk there. If you ever look it up, there's no documentation. It says we will never be, because they don't want that, and they want to leave the door open. There might be that one-off option that it may just make sense, but thus far in their history of I don't know how many projects, they don't do field houses. They don't do, well, anyways, I'll get to the next slide. And I just want to make this bright. So once you get, this is like, they won't sign a project funding agreement with you. They'll let you study it. We can go through and study it, but when you get to the end of schematic design, if you have a field house part of that, and they've told you no and you're still fighting for it, they're most likely not going to sign a project funding agreement. You got these other things where they'll sign a project funding agreement with you, but there's items that are ineligible for reimbursement, and there's some that are like categorically, and then just cost caps. We're only paying this much and no more, no matter how reasonable and necessary the item is. So this is will not sign a PFA, and again the asterisk. This is all anecdotal, or it's not written in stone. But my advice to you guys: no new field house, and then really this. And if you try to get around it, no gym larger than 18,000 square feet, and they also have like auditoriums. You can't have them larger than 13,300. Typically, by the way, another interesting point with the MSBA where they impact schools is, you want to have a school-wide assembly. You think of the auditorium. Well, their rule is we're only going to give you 2/3 of the size of the design enrollment. So what are you supposed to do with the other third of the kids? But that's just the way it is. That's just how they're dividing up their money and their funds, and across the state. Think of it that way. That's that's the only way you can explain it to yourself.
Could we refer to it as a training center rather than an auditorium?
So it's funny you say that. Along the
I know
same,
a town that tried to get that through.
no, along the same lines, but I'll talk the real life experience. Woodland cannot have an auditorium. Elementary schools cannot have an auditorium. Woodland elementary schools are allowed a certain size gymnasium. It was not adequate. The size that was allowed was not adequate to get 1,000 kids through the required gym periods in a school schedule, which is why there is a fitness center next to the gym at Woodland, because we were able to prove that we needed the space to get the student body through the required phys ed the mandated phys ed requirement. Therefore, we were able to build next to it, which is
tied to the academics, the phys ed requirement.
Right, which is why Woodland has a gym and a fitness center right next to it.
Yeah,
that's how that ended
cafetorium, too.
up. So in the cafetorium, because you can't have an auditorium.
That's right.
So but those are the things. That's what we have to deal with. So. The auditorium size is going to be limited. The field houses, we know about the field house.
Gym size is going to be
the gym sizes, but we already have it, so we get into that whole question. And you can't build a new pool, but you can renovate an existing pool.
But not be reimbursed for it.
Not being reimbursed for it. But you're gonna, but again, you're gonna, okay, keep going.
Yeah.
You guys are getting our auditorium.
Huh?
How big is the
I don't know.
auditorium?
I don't know.
I think it's Bruce.
Any idea how big it is, how many seats in it?
It's got about 750, I think.
No, but how square footage?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, because these numbers don't mean anything to me when you say
Sure.
13,000
Yeah, no, and it will.
square feet.
So think of this as a preview of, again, you are getting a super advanced preview of when the OPM and the designer actually get on board. Over the next 2 years, you're going to get on all this. You're getting the crash course now. So like I said, with a signed PFA, certain costs these are the category 100%. Anything legal, there's going to be a legal cost for something. They're not going to pay for it. It's just, whether it's needed or not, they're not paying for it. If you happen to have a site acquisition cost, you need to go out and buy something. Eminent domain, or that same thing. That's all on the town or city. Rental or storage costs, modular classrooms. They're not going to pay for those. Demolitions costs, unless deemed as the most cost-effective solution. Asbestos-containing materials. I think they just expect you. Those are already out of the building under your own HERA plan or something. District admin offices. Again, the only way I can explain this, if you can imagine you're doing an elementary school that doesn't have a district admin, so I guess to keep everything fair, they just automatically took district administration offices out.
And that's going to be a key issue here, because central office right now is at 31 West Fountain Street.
Right.
Where's it going to go? It's going to be an issue whether it's going to be built as part of this project non-reimbursable, and at that point, you have to look and see, should it be someplace else? But we're going to have to get there at
So I
some
hope
point.
you guys get, there are these tiers of, not even a project starting versus, you can have it now, we're into the tiers of, you can have it part of the project, but
Can't bid it.
100% on you.
Sure.
And then the next tier that I'll
And that might be the most economical, we don't know.
yeah. And the next tier I have, in swimming pools, I have their skating rinks, greenhouses, friend of those who have those. Every school has, every high school has a greenhouse, but they just don't pay for it. So now we're in that last secondary, they still pay for it.
This is
but then they have a
important.
cap. And so there's a soft cost cap. This in 20% of construction costs, your OPM designer will typically stay within that. We know to not go above that. A&E and OPM fee caps, it's an interesting one. So the design OPM, anyway, 10% and 3.5%, but at $550 a square foot. I don't know if you guys, I'm going to assume you don't know what costs are nowadays. We just priced out Agawam High School to be $792 and
Per square foot.
per square foot. That hasn't been bid out. That was at schematic design in June. Wakefield, I just heard this morning, their bids came back and they're at $850 a square foot. So no matter, and again, they're not building the Taj Mahal. That's just the cost of construction. So the MSBA is not paying $300 a square, or not participating in $300 a square foot.
And that's where that shrinkage ends up from the reimbursement rate, which here,
That's right.
the latest numbers for this project is 73.32%. That's the hard number that was represented by MSBA on that kickoff phone call. I don't remember who you were there, Kevin.
I was, yeah.
Okay, so 73.32, it will shrink. The question is, how much will it shrink? And that's part of the reason. So you're going to get 73.32% on 550 a square foot.
Or put the other way, you're having to pay 100% of that 25% that they're not participating in.
Right.
Plus $300 if it's at $850 a square foot.
Correct.
So just,
Well, I think it's pretty simple to calculate. It's what the state's generating on sales tax income. What's the economy in the state at the time?
that you would love to think that they were tracking one-to-one. No. We just met this morning, and believe it or not, I'm happy to report to you that I was on the board meeting this morning. I don't know if I copied the slide. I did copy it, but I didn't include it here. Basically they went up like $20, 50, over, I don't know, like $100 over a 10-year period. It just wasn't. And meanwhile, before COVID, we were tracking 3% escalation. And so it wasn't tracking then. Then COVID hit, and literally it was like 30% escalation over a 2-year period. However you want to divvy it up, but over that, it was 30%. And schools that were cost estimated before COVID, they had and then versus after, they had a massively hard time, and they actually had to get supplemental funds. Before I go though, site work costs $55 a bare square foot. It's changed their model. It was 8%. He was right, but they've changed it. Kind of equals out the same thing. Now it's just tied to the size of the building.
Well, that's 10%.
Exactly. There you go.
55 is 10% of 550. So it's slightly higher.
You're capped at your FF&E as your furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and technology. They participate in that up to a point. Usually, it's not enough for the furniture, but, you know, the tech usually comes in. And hard contingency, you know, and so all this.
Mr. Chair, when you say furniture, is that assuming that all the furniture gets thrown away and you start fresh, or?
You can do it any way you want.
But I mean, what's a practical, what
At
normally
at
happens?
Woodland, everything was new.
Yeah, it
Yes.
depends on the stuff now.
At Woodland,
It all went-
it was
At
not.
Woodland, everything was new. Again, that doesn't mean you have to do it that way.
Correct.
But that's your hard number. Right now, $2,400 per student for FF&E.
That's assuming nothing's in, it's an empty building.
It doesn't matter. That's what they
It
will
doesn't assume an empty
contribute.
building.
No, but I'm wondering, what is normal? Is 2,400 cover it, or?
No, not for, if you're
No, if
doing
you
new
do everything
construction and everything new, that's, yeah, it just doesn't cover it. And, you know, especially now you're getting into like, will it cover for an elementary school? Yes. Will it cover for a high school with its, you know, microscopes and, you know, all those items like that and computers? No, it won't cover it. And yeah, that's another interesting point. It's $2,400 for an elementary school, middle school, high school. They just don't change. It just is what it is. So. And the same thing for the construction costs, too. You know, a high school has higher mechanical needs for the science and exhaust fumes and you know, things like that. But they don't have any changes. So. But this morning, they did actually, I'm surprised that they voted to increase it. So it was $550 up until this morning. Now, for any projects on or after January 1st, 2025, that signs a project scope and budget agreement.
When was the last time they updated that, do you know?
Believe it or not, it was, I think, last October.
Okay, so by the time we get there, this could be updated
It
again.
could be updated again.
It's likely to be updated
I was
again.
pleasantly surprised because they drastically made it jump to $550 from what it previously was. So for them to be already turning around and increasing it again, that's a positive sign.
Just very briefly, this is going to stick in my mind if I don't ask the question. So additional HVAC materials for science labs goes into $2,400 per student number as opposed to mechanical systems?
I was talking about the $550 cap of construction, general construction.
I understand.
You don't have that in elementary, so your elementary costs for a school should naturally be lower
Yep.
than a high school.
I get it.
And so it's closer, so, you know, you really should be getting more reimbursement for an elementary school than a more complicated school. VOTEC, you know, those are more complicated schools. And basically, you know, these are some additional incentive reimbursement points they have. I just want to say 0 for 2 for maintenance. That's what we were talking, that's part of this eligibility period. So instead of 73.31, you could have, you know, typically we all assume a value of 1.5. You know, we should be around there. And that's what I'll be checking. We're working with the district, checking to see that all the documents are provided so that we're maximizing this line. They used to have a point for CMR, but everyone did CMR, so they took that away.
The CMR is?
The point is no longer there. But
What was it applicable to for people that don't know?
Oh, it was like an extra point. So you get an extra point of reimbursement.
What is CMR?
Oh, construction manager at risk, I'm sorry. Versus the general contractor who does design, bid, build.
Okay.
Traditional. CMR, yeah, you bring him on, basically, we bring him on typically during schematic design. We want his fingers in the design and part of the project as sooner the better. Because, you know, he looks at the project a different way.
But now we get an owner's project manager,
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. You have that as well.
which actually,
You have both, is what I'm saying.
right, but from my perspective, the OPM system, and I was involved with before that, OPM system works much better.
Yeah.
It works much better because you're dealing with a person like James who knows the system, which is what he's showing you today, things that, like I said a month ago, we don't even know what we don't know.
And this one is an interesting one for they do try to incentivize renovations. Now, that doesn't always work because literally, you know, really the decision usually almost always comes down to what do you do with the kids, you know, during a renovation. We've already discussed this a little bit, and it feels like we have solutions for here to make it happen, a renovation. But that's for many other districts, you know, like they don't have options or opportunities. And but if they do, they literally, the total of renovated area over the total, and they'll give you whatever that percentage is. So if it's 50%, then you get 2.5 points. And then lastly is energy efficiency. You're going to hit 3. You're automatically basically going to hit 3 points just because the MSBA requires you to be LEED Silver certified, and you need to meet the new energy stretch codes regardless. So
Milford is not a stretch code community.
that's fine. That would get
But
you. the
it's not going to matter here.
Well, that would get you the 4th point. So,
Right.
What is a stretch code?
You vote to adopt the stretch code, which was an expanded energy code under the building code. A lot of the old stretch code requirements are now embedded in the base code.
Is it the new stretch code for that top rating, or is it the old stretch code? They just voted the new stretch code.
So it's funny. I'm sorry, I'm not up to speed, but yeah, there's a new stretch. There's the old stretch code that was made now standard,
Right, and the new stretch code.
and then, yes. So everyone is on the old.
The old stretch code is embedded in
Yeah, is now the
base,
new
in the base
baseline.
building code now. Beyond the old stretch code, actually, is embedded into the new energy code. I mean, into the base building code.
So if we're going to adopt the new one, a few years from now, they're just going to make it the standard anyway.
We don't know.
Let's hope not. I'm sorry. It adds costs.
All right.
That's what I know. Yeah. So.
Is that the end of your presentation, Jim?
That was the end of
Okay.
my presentation. I'm loading up Josh's.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I took too much time. I hope that was helpful.
All right. Again, just if you, my style is not a free-for-all, not the Wild West, but it's really, as long as we don't talk over each other, everyone gets to ask the questions and get answers, because that's useful for everybody here to know things. So please, feel free. That's just my style, and that I just try to keep the meeting going. So we are at,
Josh's.
this is Josh's? Okay, then we're going to skip, we'll go right to F, Foxtrot, discussion regarding grade.
I can do a quick update on deliverables.
Oh, actually, that's actually quite short. So let's talk about the eligibility period and scheduled deliverables update. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 different items, and some of them have very short windows and some are longer. Kevin, if you could talk about that.
I'm just going to walk you through really quickly. So the first thing is the initial compliance certification. That's just the school committee and the select board reaffirming their commitment to the project, and that's already been done.
Okay.
And the due date on that is...
That was required by the day after tomorrow it's done.
Yep, August 30th. It was done a few months ago, actually.
Okay.
The next thing is the school building committee, and I think we've established that. So
Right, that
that's-
was required September 30th this
Correct.
year. We're ahead of that.
Correct. Educational profile is due October 30th, and we've got a draft in place. We're going to review that with the school committee next week, and if that's acceptable, we're going to, add the details and fill in the proper forms and have that done well before October 30th.
And that's due by October 30th, so we're on track with that.
Similarly, the Chapter 74 vocational technical educational viability documentation, really what this is looking at, and this is something we're going to do, is looking at, what potential Chapter 74 programs we could look at for the Milford Public Schools, and there's a whole assessment process during the feasibility part. The next piece, and that's due October 30th again, and I think we're in good shape there. Online enrollment projection, also due October 30th. If you watch any school committee meetings, basically every other meeting I'm giving an enrollment projection into the school committee, so we're pretty good in terms of...
And this is really the main reason why I felt it was really important to have a meeting now, because I know I'm being invited to the school committee meeting a week from tomorrow to talk about this, and we'll talk more, Josh will talk more about it, but the big question here is it going to be an 8 through 12 or a 7 through 12 school? And it's really the school committee, the school department's decision, but I know they have come to me with some experience, former school committee member, building committee member, in understanding some of what James is talking about. We know we're overcrowded at Stacy Middle School. We know we're overcrowded at Woodland the day it opened. We know we just added modular classrooms at Brookside. I'm not sure what the status is at Memorial, but I can't imagine it's much different.
No space.
No space. So the only ability that this town has, the town of Milford has at the moment, to increase space is at a high school project. Therefore, should it be a 7 through 12 school to alleviate pressure on the other buildings? And that's up to the school department to figure out, if you do that, how do you realign Memorial, Brookside, Woodland, Stacy Middle School? I mean, conceptually, I could see, right now, Stacy Middle School is a 6, 7, 8 school. If you take 7 and 8 out, maybe Woodland becomes a 4, 5, 6 school instead of a 3, 4, 5 school. I don't know the answer, but we're going to, and we're going to talk, Josh will talk more about it, Kevin will talk about it, but I think the only economical way, the only practical way to create more seats for students is that whatever we build becomes a true junior, senior high school, 7 through 12. And if we go into construct the design with that concept, we have the ability to segregate 7 and 8 from 9 through 12. Just thinking ahead, but I don't want to derail
I
your
think
presentation.
that's spot on. And the other piece with enrollment is we're up about 12%, I think, in the last 8 to 10 years in overall enrollment. So the equivalent of, it's roughly 500 students and change. And like Jonathan said earlier, our enrollment isn't driven by the
Construction starts and birth rate.
correct,
Those are the two keys that.
yeah, and the group that the MSB uses, NESDAQ, has really struggled to accurately project our population over the last decade or so. And we've had many conversations with NESDAQ about that because we're in. Josh, maybe you can answer this question. The high school, in terms of growth, if we're just looking at the high schools opposed to the district, is in the top 2 or 3% or 4% of the.
We're in the top 1% of general high schools in the Commonwealth in terms of enrollment growth over the past 7 fiscal years.
Yeah, so that gives you a sense of like what kind of an outlier we are as a community.
Are there any, what other comps communities are there for similar to us?
Lawrence High School has seen growth similar to ours. I'd have to, it won't take me long to pull it up.
Anything in like Metro West that we can, nothing like Marlboro, Framingham, not the same situation?
No, I believe Marlboro's, don't quote me on this, I believe they've experienced enrollment decline largely because of AMSA charter school.
Okay.
And I don't believe Framingham has experienced enrollment growth anything on the order of magnitude that we have.
Jonathan, one caveat. I know it's the school committee and department that dictates we're going to have a 7 and 8, 9 through 12, but we have to make sure we understand the costs.
No question about it, but
Because adding a 7 and 8, I can't imagine is free.
It's cheaper now than it is 5 years from now, though.
it'll
But
be,
you have to go through it. Make sure
it will, at the end of the day, Al,
If you need it, you need it.
everyone's already talking about an 8 through 12 school. To add another grade, the incremental cost will.
I agree with you. It's just we have to take it
no question.
and say, when you said the SBA is going to want us to do all these scenarios,
Yeah.
candidly, that doesn't scare me at all. Because the town of Milford is going to want to do all the scenarios.
No
we're
question,
talking
yeah.
a real threat of profanity here, a debt exclusion.
Don't even, those two words don't exist in the town of Milford.
Well, no, we've always said we don't use profanity. 2.5
Right.
increase in debt exclusion.
I had the under on that, Al. I lost $1.
But Al, the reality is, you can't ignore the big picture here.
No.
So if you're bursting at the seams and you have coat closets at Stacy Middle School turned into makeshift classrooms, you have to take advantage of the opportunities in front of us.
Jonathan, all I'm saying is we have to study.
Oh, yeah.
We have a high school, 9 through 12. It's going to cost $100 to renovate.
Yeah.
an 8 through 12 costs 110, a 7 through 12, and go through all the options.
The guideline here is October 30th, we have to have an enrollment projection. We have 30, 60, 62 days to turn in an enrollment projection. We don't want to be too low if we're talking about putting 7th grade there.
So you're gonna, let me get this. When we get through this, to the end of that, what we really want is to have the options that you're discussing. And so you're gonna be working with NESDEC, and we're gonna say, we would wish to study, and we'd ask the MSBA, we wish to study maybe what a 9 through 12 is, and they're going to say at 1350, or whatever NESDEC said, and we can get out of them. And then this is what the 8th grade is at 1600, and this is the 7th, and we want to study what a 7 through 12 is at 1850.
But we can't, I think we have to be in front of this right now.
Yeah.
And again, it's a school committee issue. I have spoken to a few school committee members. That's why I was lucky enough to get invited to their meeting. But that's where we're at.
Kevin, what did you see for, what was your increase this year in terms of where we were total student population last year?
24 to 25, we're down slightly from where we ended in 25, and we're up probably a percentage or so from where we started in 24.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why I'm asking is, outside of the 40Bs, and I have no idea what's going to happen to them, and there's other issues with that we may or may not be aware of, but the town, I think we all know where a lot of the students came from. There wasn't necessarily construction that supported those students, but they came in. But we're at a point, of course, outside of the state deciding they wanted to change zoning again, which is a different story, and I don't know how they handled that.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah. I don't see I think we've gotten to a point where a lot of the places that can have multiple families are already there.
We're running out of bedrooms.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
so I'm not sure that you have that outside of the 40Bs, and I don't know what's going to happen there.
The problem with that argument is that, unless I'm wrong, and Rick may know better, the governor recently signed into law the accessory dwelling unit.
That's what I was referring to with the state
So
deciding.
there are no more single-family zone districts in Massachusetts. Period. Everybody has.
Shed rented out.
Huh?
I'm going to get my shed rented out.
Everybody now has the right to build 800 feet or 900? 900 square feet.
Depending on the area.
Or a percentage of the
size
Or
of
the percentage. So that's where I think that the argument fails, because there's an awful lot of property that people can now build that accessory dwelling unit, garage, bedroom, living room, kitchen.
Yeah, there is, but there isn't.
Well, okay.
I mean, you've got a couple issues with Milford. Any of the areas that number doesn't work out. Any of the areas that are not sewered.
Well, okay.
And you're going to come close, and
Sure.
in terms of water, we can't support that much water through there, so I don't know where people are going to connect that into.
My water commissioner.
There are issues that.
I'm not wearing my water commissioner hat
And even the
tonight.
sewer department has a fixed amount. If you
Sure.
add in that many units of 40B housing, that plant can't really take that much more either. So
Joe, all
I
valid
thought the
argument.
paradigm was shifting. It used to be, if you have a 2-bedroom complex, you get no kids. But it seems like, because of,
2-bedroom will have some kids. The thing is, you'll have 10% of the 40Bs will have 3 bedrooms.
well, even the 2 bedrooms, though, my understanding is you're getting a higher density
Yeah.
in the 2-bedroom.
That's exactly what's happening.
When we were kids, you thought of Laurelwood. The bus went by Laurelwood, you had 2 kids get on the bus. Now, all of a sudden, these 2-bedroom condos and all, they have multiple
The
kids.
40Bs aren't those things anymore. They're effectively the Route 9 apartment complexes that are going in now. So they're high density, limited space.
That's my point. We're going to get
With
growth
with
even
kids or
without
no
building.
kids?
Well, yeah. How many kids, I don't know. And that's why I said outside of the 40B. And that's why I asked the question as to how many kids we're getting. I think we were And again, outside of these other changes, and who knows how they're going to play out, we were getting to a point where we were flush. I don't know that that's going to continue going on or not.
It's hard to say.
Can I ask you a question about
But even if stay where we are with moderate growth, we're still overcrowded today.
Oh, I'm not saying we're not.
Yeah, Patrick.
So back to the point of adding the seventh grade, I mean, obviously, whatever the school department tells us we have to do is what we do. We have to keep in mind, though, to Al's point, these calculations are very important. You know, this was pitched as a high school, and it's an 8th grade, and now it's a 7th grade. And so I think that we have to have an opportunity to game some of this out, because people need to understand what the dollars and cents are in every single one of these. And we have to make sure that we're thinking about that at all stages of this project. So we're talking about that people know we're completely transparent. By doing this now, we're saving money, to your point, that we're not building another school behind the Stacy Middle School in 3 years from now.
Well, the point is, you got to bring up what Mitch said. You got to look at, this is going to be over in 5 years, 6 years. High school is going to be in the rearview mirror. And as soon as it's opened, Stacy comes right on its heels.
People, you got to remember, Stacy Middle School next year is a 30-year-old renovation. Think that through. 30 years ago, 1995, Stacy Middle School opened as a renovated school. Brookside reopened in 07, 14 years ago. 14, did I do the math right? No. Yeah. 07, 14 years ago. Woodland, the newest school, is 7 years old. It opened 7 years ago, opened in 17. Yeah. We lose track of time. But
Jonathan, we have 5 major schools. The schools tend to last 40 to 50 years. So every 8 to 10 years, you got to plan on a major renovation. The problem this time is, this is the aircraft carrier of the fleet.
There you go.
So when we did Woodland, when we put money away for Brookside, the idea was we were going to use the stabilization. We didn't need it. For Woodland, we didn't need it. Yeah. But this is the aircraft carrier. Yeah. It's too big to fund without some extra help.
We'll see. Mitch, you had...
Yeah, I have a financial question about what we're talking about. So, based on your presentations, this is for you, that when certain parts of the formula are tied to whether it's square footage or whatever, or the reimbursement rate per student, is the state going to be reimbursing a higher dollar amount if we add students to if we make it a 7 through 12?
Yes.
So I mean, we will be able to take advantage of that opportunity if we were to.
So the way it works
is another school, anyways. If you were doing it, if you were redoing it,
but then we have to re-enter the MSBA pipeline. It would be another process.
Yeah. So right, just like with that space summary template, if there's 1,000 students, you get 30 classrooms. If there's 1,400 students, you get 40 classrooms. And the square footage automatically grows. You're still capped at that. It's now 686. But, so now your building has grown, your cap is still staying the same, and,
I think an important point to recognize is that whatever we build gets more expensive every day.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
No question. The faster we get this going and done, and the more students we can accommodate, there will never be a lower cost per student than right now.
It's almost
unless you end up with a Great Depression, nothing's going down.
Yeah, in my opinion, it would be smart to advocate for the additional grades to add them.
The incremental cost, and that's again has to be studied through the process. But the incremental cost to put 7th grade up there will be, I believe, less than any other way to accommodate those 300, 400
Pale by comparison to those schools.
It may actually.
Pale by comparison.
And it may actually bring down the total cost in a certain sense, because
exactly.
you're going to if you have to do it with students up there, you're going to be able to open up space that's available to those students that in the high school that you're going to use for a junior high school in the meantime, so you can get them out.
Exactly.
Well, the biggest thing is you don't have an option with Stacy. Last time I looked,
there's nothing that you can build.
Where are you going to go? You can't go on School Street. You can't expand.
There's none of the other. There is no other school in town that you can expand the footprint. You can't expand Stacy. You can't expand Memorial. You can't expand Brookside. You can't expand Woodland. So you either build a new facility somewhere else, which I don't know where you would put it, and I don't know how you would configure it, or you build in, how many seventh grade students today?
350-ish.
Or you accommodate another 350, which is a smaller percentage if you're already going 8 through 12. I just don't see any place else to
I
put them.
think if we present it right, we do the study,
You have to do the study.
and you sit there and say, there is no other choice, because you can't expand Stacy. You can't expand Memorial. You can't build a new school. Where are you going to put it? Asylum Street?
We're not building, I
You
keep
know.
saying, we're not building a Milford Public School in Hopedale, I'm sorry.
Well, that's,
Sorry,
it
Mitch.
makes no sense to put a
I
school.
appreciate that.
Actually, use
And Asylum Street is Hopedale, I'm sorry.
Especially if you live on the Medway side.
We built a fire station in Medway.
We could look at the Draper factory site, maybe.
Okay, so anyway.
I don't want to talk about that.
So let's move on. That's the enrollment projection. We've spent a lot of time talking about it. It ultimately becomes a school department decision as to what the grade alignment will be. I'm hoping that it ends up being a 7 through 12 school as a taxpayer, and, I think it's the most economical way to proceed, but we'll get there. So that's due by October 30th. That's being worked on. Kevin?
Yeah, I've got about 3 more pieces here,
Yeah.
real quick. So once that's in the MSBA and the school department schedules an enrollment meeting, and that has to be done by January 28th. So once the October 30th numbers are in, they'll schedule an enrollment meeting with us where we'll present basically our case and why we're unique. The local vote authorization, this is actually the biggest hurdle during the eligibility period, and it's already completed. And we did that at the Maytown meeting, so that's great.
So that means that by April 28th of next year, we need to vote to fund the feasibility study,
Which we've already done,
which you've already done,
yes.
Town meeting.
okay, the study.
Yeah.
So we're ahead of the curve on that.
Exactly.
Right.
And the last piece is the feasibility study agreement, and that's when we basically say, like, we want to look at the 7 through 12, we want to look at the 8 through 12, what does it look like 9 through 12, new construction versus renovation.
There you go. Thank you, Kevin. The next, any other questions about any of that? Okay, so that's our schedule of deliverables. Josh, you're up. Discussion regarding school grades configuration. We already started, but please tell us what we missed.
I'm not sure that I have a whole lot more to add to it, but I will present just a couple of firm numbers that may be helpful for folks to have as reference. There are sort of 2 key issues that I wanted to share with the committee for consideration and discussion tonight. The first is around potential grade level reconfiguration, which we have been touching on in multiple stages of the conversation. And the second is around career and technical education programming, which I will refer to as CTE programming going forward. So the table that you'll see next, you can skip over that, thank you. The table you'll see next just sort of captures some of what Kevin spoke about in general terms. So this is enrollment in the district from fiscal year 16 through 24. You can see if you look in the third column on the top row that from 16 to 24 there was a net growth of 496 students. There's a 12% increase over that period of time. On the far right columns, you can see the annual change. This is based on my analysis. This is very atypical in the Commonwealth. There's a very, very small number of districts that are experiencing enrollment growth at this order of magnitude. And while I don't have the NESDEC projections in front of me, it is my understanding, as Kevin alluded to earlier, that the 12% increase that we experienced from fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 24 was not projected by anyone, and certainly not by NESDEC. And so that will be an important point for us to consider as we think about the future, that our district enrollment is especially hard for anyone to forecast, including myself and Kevin, due to some of the peculiarities of the town of Milford. And we're going to, I'm sure, have some challenging conversations with the Mass School Building Authority as we try to determine what's an appropriate estimate for enrollment going forward in the future.
Josh, what happened in 2022? That seems like even amongst your graph, that's a statistical outlier there, 300 students.
Yeah, so I believe what happened in fiscal year 22 is that fiscal year 21, people stopped moving. So schools closed in the spring of 2020. In the 2020-2021 school year, I think there was very little international migration, and I think there was very little domestic migration. And schools were, as you may recall, we were in sort of various learning modalities over the course of the year, 7 at Milford High School in fiscal year 21. So fiscal year 21 was a school year unlike any other in the history of American public education, and is unlike any other year in American history. Nothing about the past had any relationship to what happened in fiscal year 21. So I think in fiscal year 22, there's a lot of pent-up energy. I think there's a lot of people who maybe would have been moving under normal circumstances, and they weren't moving in fiscal year 21. And as society started to normalize and school started to normalize and migration patterns started to return to some pre-pandemic norms, I think you saw a lot of people on the move. So we saw a huge increase of student enrollment in fiscal year 22 that, as you can see on the chart, is an extreme outlier compared to all the other years from FY16 to FY24. So with regards to grade level configuration, I think this is really just going to maybe summarize the points that have already been stated. We have serious challenges in the district, the first of which is sustained overcrowding at Stacy Middle School and Woodland Elementary School. Please, James. Yep, sorry. Yep. No worries. In my estimation, I think, Kevin, please correct me if you see it differently, I believe that there is significant risk for additional enrollment growth across the district in the near and medium term. I'm not confident that I can predict for you that we're going to see additional enrollment growth in the near and medium term, but given what we've been through in the last decade, it seems to me that it would be irresponsible to just sort of assume that that's all behind us and that there will be no enrollment growth going forward.
And one of the things, if I could just jump in, one of the things we're worried about for this year in terms of just unpredictability is with some of the changes with like the shelter situation across the state. There's been a few different changes there. We may see a bump this year that we wouldn't have seen previously. And again, it's very unpredictable. So that's something that we're talking about, we're kind of preparing for. It may or may not happen. We may or may not see a big bump in students.
Can you go just back to the prior slide, the matrix, the chart, if you could? My concern is that over 8 years, it's 12%. There's a little bit of up and down there. But if it's 6% over the next 8 years, we got a real problem.
We do.
We're overcrowded today, so even if it goes to 0%, we're still in trouble. That's my fear.
And I share that concern, having led the high school through a period of unprecedented and unanticipated growth, and having worked with my colleagues to try to manage that challenge, I would sleep better at night if we were erring on the side of safety. And preparing for the very distinct possibility that we may see another, not only spike in enrollment growth, but we could see perhaps an extended period of sustained enrollment growth like we did over the past decade.
Maybe I'm missing something, but if we adopt the 7 and 8 addition, that's room for 600 kids, or 700 kids. Wouldn't that take care of a 6 to 7% growth?
You would. That's
so. If I may, James, if you could please advance
that's
to
what
the next couple points here. So as we think about the possible opportunities in a Milford High School project, if we were to shift grade 8 to Milford High School, that's going to reduce student enrollment at Stacy by approximately 30 to 35%. Right? If you were to shift grade 7 to Milford High School as well, that could enable a reconfiguration of both Woodland Elementary School and Stacy Middle School, leaving room for growth at both of those schools. So this is just one possible reconfiguration where Woodland Elementary, it could be a 3-4. Stacy could be a 5-6. Milford High School could be a 7-12. Right? So Woodland Elementary School is carrying 3 grades of students today.
But that's my point. No matter which way you shuffle the deck, if we add a 7 and 8 to the high school, assuming the classes before 8th grade are 350, because they drop after 8th grade, but it's 700 extra spaces that you can shift around anywhere anyhow, any manner that is needed.
Over 4 schools.
Well, again, a district.
Over,
Sure.
yeah, but you can shift 700 seats in 4 schools.
If you relocate 2 grades out of Stacy, then you've got 2 grades on the board to move around. I would say just for everyone's understanding about our the way the demographics and enrollment work in Milford High School, we actually normally see, I should say throughout the entirety of my tenure at Milford High School, we've seen enrollment in grade 9 be significantly higher than enrollment in grade 8. And that's because a very large percentage of our adolescent immigrant students are coming in at grade 9.
Josh, I'm going to add...
In normal districts, you would oftentimes see a decrease in enrollment.
60 kids.
But I'm going to ask you to address what you had mentioned at a prior date. What happens, let's just jump forward, you bring in 7th and 8th to the high school, they get involved in the extra and co-curricular activities. What happens then when they get to 9th grade?
Well,
And then go one step further, if you have Chapter 74 programming, what happens then?
So my hope, and Kevin has shared, I believe he has some anecdotal reports from other superintendents and other districts. I don't have empirical data to demonstrate this, but I would be optimistic that if we had students who were with us prior to grade 9, and they became embedded in the culture of the school, and they had the opportunity to experience the full breadth of our academic programming, I think we would likely see higher rates of retention than we've seen in recent history.
Because we used to lose like 60 kids from middle school east
Yeah.
to the high school, to BVT, to private other schools. It used to be like 60 kid drop.
But now get a kid involved in JV sports in 7th grade, 8th grade, all of a sudden that kid, do I really want to go somewhere else, or am I happy where I am with my friends?
That's another question, though, because like if you add 2 grades to the high school, how is that going to, in your opinion, Josh, how is that going to impact the use of facilities like the gymnasium, the pool, the auditorium? Are we going to have to perhaps plan to build out extra space to accommodate those extra students for those activities?
So, and this is, I would maybe look to James, I'm not sure if you have experience with schools that have undergone this kind of grade level reconfiguration at the high school.
I have not, but they would, naturally, you have a gym that you're using now. The MSBA will have they're going to have a number through their magic calculations of what 7 through 12 gym size should be. And so maybe that's the answer. It's like, and they almost force you, like, no, this is what we say your gym size should be, up to 18,000, I think is what it was. So make it work.
Well, I guess my point is, if we're going to do something, we got to do it right. And I know that we're not going to get reimbursed for certain portions of this, but like BVT has 2 kids. I mean, it's we'll get into BVT after.
Mike, you had a question?
I think the important thing is that, and Josh and Kevin, as far as the grade configuration and making it work, I really feel is your responsibility. But the bigger picture is, when we go in front of town meeting to sell this project, we're going to be able to sell it to people in that, we've got 5 schools that are jammed. If we spend a little bit more right now, we can reconfigure the high school to pick up these 2 extra grades, take pressure off the other schools, and maybe we won't have to do anything for them. I think that's what we have to stay.
That's exactly the message,
When
Mike.
we go to town meeting, because that's where it's discussed, that's the final say. And I think if we can show, and I know this is a long way down the road, but if we can show the taxpayers of this community that, yeah, we are doing it, reconfiguring the grades, we're doing it for space, we give a better educational process, but at the end of the day, also, one of the bigger reasons we're doing it is save taxpayer money. Right. Take the pressure off the other schools.
Patrick.
Josh, when did you present this to the school committee? What did they say?
I'll be presenting the school committee next Thursday.
Okay, this is a preview.
Next Thursday. This is all brand new.
If I may add, in terms of design, I have experienced schools that have merged, actually 3 schools, and it was from pre-K all the way to 8th grade. And one of the biggest selling points was the shared amenities, the gym and the auditorium, especially because of the 7 to essentially 12th grade. In terms of the student experience and design, there's not really much tweaking there. In our experience with this particular school, it was a bigger gap because the preschool experience needs to be fairly adjusted and more intertwined with that specific student need. But it's just so close in terms of grade level that I don't see in design-wise just having a little bit more adjustment made to amenities such as a gym or an auditorium to make such a big difference in terms of adding more into the design.
James, you mentioned that a 7 through 12 gets a bigger number for square footage of gym. If we're doing,
There is a cap.
More students.
well, no, I understand, but my question is, if we're doing a field house anyway, do we get to apply that money, that extra money?
Al's hung up on the field house.
We're going to have a detached gym.
Training center. It's a training facility.
Whatever you call it, do we get to take advantage of that money?
Yeah, so playing that out, playing devil's advocate, playing it out, here's one scenario. You go through, you build a high school with a maximum size gym that the MSBA allows. But then you're going to have like another year, it gets done, so 6 years from now, and then maybe you're already planning, while this project is getting closed out, the high school is getting closed out, you're planning the gym. So then once construction hits, so a year maybe for a so.
And maybe, and again, it requires analysis, maybe if it is a 7 through 12 school, you need more gym space.
No, I'm not saying, I'm just saying
No,
if we add on a field house, do we get to take the extra money to offset some of the cost?
I don't know. There is no taking extra money.
Al
You're
wants the
spending it
state
on
to pay for the field house.
That's right.
I think the better way to look at it would be that whatever, you're going to be over the cost to begin with.
Yes.
So whatever the extra reimbursement is lowers the town's share of the expense, therefore those extra funds are available for however town meeting votes to
That
spend
makes
them.
sense.
But you get to the same thing.
Yes.
But yes. So the short answer is, no, the MSBA doesn't apply it, but yes, money being fungible, you get to the same point.
But it's too much tap dancing, I would say. If you're building this brand new high school with the idea of building a field house, but you have to make. I think the MSBA is going to require you to make this school work without the field house.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you'd have to do some great designing to have a space for it, a field house to.
Well, you could design for it. That's not
The
unreasonable.
cleanest way to do it is just treat it as a separate project.
It's not unreasonable to
But
design.
it's kind of hard to do because now it still needs all the utilities running to this field house. It would make a lot of sense if you had that part of the
To be able to do
plan.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
Chris.
As a school committee rep, I would encourage everybody here, if they do have questions, concerns, to address school committee over the next week via email or anything like that. So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of opinions in the room from that 7 to 12 configuration. I'm not here to say one way or another, but I think that's going to be very important that if this is truly, or it is school committee's decision on this grade configuration, that members of this committee reach out, express, your thoughts and opinions towards the school committee members, right? To focus us, because we're going to have a lot of these same questions come next Thursday. I will bring up, the auxiliary dwelling units and the 40B projects, and just to circle back quickly, those, even though the state has made the auxiliary dwelling units a law, and we have 40B proposals in the pipeline, the MSBA will not consider those as an enrollment projection, correct?
No, I think they will.
They
NESDEC will get
Okay,
involved.
Good. All right.
Yes, no,
Yeah,
they will.
As long as they will. All right, good. I just want to be clear on that.
I think what we're having issues
Yeah.
is the other factors of population growth.
They're not going
Right, we're gonna have, yeah.
40Bs maybe. I can't imagine that they're going to have an idea on the auxiliary dwellings and how that affects. They should, considering they're all part of the state, but I don't know if they're going to.
Right, they're not going to, but this is something that we as a community need to consider, right? That, does the head of household move to the auxiliary dwelling unit, gives their house up to their kids who are going to increase the enrollment in the school? I'm just saying, these are some of the things to be considered that we have to consider when we look at those grade levels from 7 through 12. So yes, it's not an easy decision. There's lots of factors involved, and I want to bring all of those to school committee. If there's other factors involved that other people are considering and want us to consider, again, please reach out to school committee. Because I know that I'm not going to have everybody's, I'm trying to capture everybody's opinions, but again, let's try to work together so we can make the right decision. And then one other question is, say we go through with the 7 through 12 configuration, and it's too expensive for the town, right? We come back and it's too expensive. Can we throttle back from 7 to 12 to 8 through 12?
That's what I wanted to answer. You don't have to, you're not choosing now. It's great. That's what I want to clarify. You're not choosing now. You're 7 and 12. You're choosing your options now. And you're making sure that you're clear with the MSBA. We want to study not just one option. We want to study 3 options going forward. And the MSBA will say, okay, that's common. I just worked on a VOTAC where they did the existing school population and they wanted to make it larger. She wanted, the superintendent wanted to make it massively larger, but she scaled it back because there's for every student she has at her school, it's taking one less from the district. So we studied 2 options there, one at 1440 and one at 1280. That's what we'd be doing here. We want to study 1 7 through 12 at X design enrollment, 1 at 8 through 12 at X design enrollment that NESDEC will weigh in on, and 1 through 9 through 12.
It'll probably be 2,000, 1,700, and 1,300.
There you go.
And then, the other thing to remember, too, is the preschool's housed in the high school complex, too. We haven't mentioned that tonight. I just wanted to throw that out there. And that's part of the project scope as well.
That's there now, yeah.
Is that reimbursable?
Yes. Well, it's, sorry, you're touching the button here.
To the point that we run out of...
No, not that. It's unfortunately, I was working with another district where the pre-K was off-site, but they wanted to take out, like you guys, they wanted to take advantage of bringing it, have it part of the high school. But they missed this opportunity to have it part of the study. And so we did it at the right time. So you guys have done that. Your leaders, Kevin and Josh, have already, it's already part of the statement of interest. The MSBA is aware. And when we get to this design enrollment, pre-K population will be part of those numbers, in addition to the high school and the 7th and 8th grade numbers. So, unfortunately, nobody knew, but the MSBA was being that nitpicky, like, you didn't tell us in time. So.
You're still on, Josh.
Okay. Jonathan, another slide? There is, yes. So Jonathan had also asked me to share some of our thinking as a preview before we go to the school committee around career and technical education and our vision for the new building. So the current challenge that we face programmatically in the school is that approximately 50% of our graduates are entering the workforce after graduation, and our high school is designed in. Our program is designed primarily as a college preparatory academic program, not as a career and technical education program. And so there's a misalignment between the way that our program is designed and the educational needs of not a small percentage of our students, but of approximately half of our students. Students going into the workforce directly after graduation, I believe, deserve robust, high-quality career and technical education. And our ability to offer high-quality CTE programming at Milford High School is extraordinarily constrained in the new building. My hope is that as we move into a new building, we can capitalize on this opportunity and not only build a new building, but transform the educational program that we're able to offer to students. Today, I believe that probably somewhere between 5 to 10% of our graduates experience what I would consider to be a high-quality CT program. And what I consider to be high quality would be 3 or more years, which would be 4 max, but 3 or 4 years of substantive progressive coursework in a specific discipline. Right? I think if you're not familiar with the format of Chapter 74 vocational programming, it will be helpful for me to give you a little introduction to the way this programming is structured. Chapter 74 is the gold standard for career and technical education in Massachusetts. When a student enrolls in a Chapter 74 program, if you have had a child go to a vocational technical school, or if you know someone whose children have gone, the way that this is referred to is that the student selects into a shop. And they select into a shop partway through their 9th grade year. During their 9th grade year, students engage in what's called an exploratory program, where they spend a relatively brief period of times visiting each of the shops, being exposed to the programs. They then have an opportunity to apply into a shop. And when they're admitted into a shop, they're now going to enroll in 3 successive years of coursework within that shop. In Chapter 74 approved programs, students must receive at least 900 hours of instruction in their shop over a 3-year period. So we consider a full year core academic course to be approximately, and I'm rounding here a little bit, it's approximately 150 hours for a full year course. So if you take an English class with Amy Cunningham, you're going to have about 150 hours of instruction, right? So right now, if you were to take 3 years of technical education in Milford High School in one discipline, which now I'm being hypothetical, you can't actually do that in our current programming, but say that you could, right? That would be 450 hours of instruction over 3 years. Chapter 74 is going to be twice as many hours. Right? It's essentially it's a double block compared to your typical academic block. So there's opportunities for a much more robust, substantive educational experience that students are going to receive in high school. And this is why, in a high-performing CTE program, students are able to leave high school as skilled tradespeople and enter directly into the workforce as skilled tradespeople because they've received a very substantive, high-quality form of career and technical education during their high school years. We have potential opportunities with the Milford High School building project. I believe, based on my conversation with my colleagues, what we assess to be the educational needs of our students, and my conversations with our liaison at the Office of Career and Technical Education at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, that we have an opportunity to transform Milford High School into what's called a comprehensive high school, with somewhere between 5 to 7 different Chapter 74 programs. If we were to do so, we could offer high-quality CT programming to somewhere between 40 to 60% of our students. I want to define what we mean by a comprehensive high school. A comprehensive high school is different than a vocational high school. At a vocational high school, 100% of the students are enrolled in a Chapter 74 or what's called a Perkins-funded program. But 100% of the students are enrolled in a multi-year CTE program. In a comprehensive high school, students choose. Some students may elect not to enroll in a multi-year CTE program. Some students may choose to enroll in a CTE program. To share with you one example of a comprehensive high school, the closest comprehensive high school to us geographically is Attleboro High School. And some of you know that Attleboro opened up a very impressive new facility just last year. Now, Attleboro High School is a comprehensive high school where 90% of the students are electing to enroll in a CTE program. That doesn't mean that 90% of their graduates are going on to enter the workforce. A large percentage, I can't quote it for you, but a very large percentage of the graduates are enrolling in college. So when a student enrolls in a career and technical education program, that doesn't mean they can't go to college. As some of you may know, our regional vocational technical high school here in Blackstone Valley Tech, over 90% of their graduates enroll in 4-year private colleges after graduation. So participation in a CTE program, a Chapter 74 CTE program in high school, does not preclude a student going on to college by any stretch of the imagination. And as we see in schools like Blackstone Valley Tech and Attleboro High School, there are large percentages of college-bound students who are electing to go into CTE programs because if the program and the schedule is structured appropriately, like they've done at Attleboro, I'm very impressed with their model. I'm happy to share that with you either tonight or at a later stage. They've organized their schedule in a model where students do not need to choose between CTE programming and advanced placement programming, or fine arts programming, or music programming. We've created a school schedule where a student can participate in music or performing arts and advanced placement courses and career and technical education courses. It is not one or the other. It's noteworthy that our current schedule model at Milford High School would not support that kind of programming. So if we were to transition into a comprehensive high school where we have a broad menu of Chapter 74 offerings for students, my strong recommendation would be that the adoption of Chapter 74 programs would need to be complemented by a shift in our schedule model, which is subject to collective bargaining. If we were to add Chapter 74 programs without making subsequent complementary changes to our scheduling model, I believe that the addition of Chapter 74 programs would effectively cannibalize our advanced placement course offerings, our music, and our fine arts offerings, which I would be adamantly opposed to. But I do believe, based on what I've seen in Attleboro, that in fact you can have your cake and eat it too if you organize your schedule appropriately. It is, I think, very important, this goes beyond the scope of the building, but I think as invested citizens and taxpayers, it's important to understand that when the school applies for Chapter 74 funding and is granted Chapter 74 funding, there is an increase in the per pupil allocation to the high school for every student that is enrolled in the Chapter 74 program. Today, it is approximately $5,000 for every student that is enrolled in a Chapter 74 program. That's not a one-time increase in funding. That is an annual sustained increase in funding. My understanding from my conversations with our colleagues in Attleboro and from other colleagues that run, that are involved in career and technical education programs that are funded by Chapter 74, is that the increase in state funding will likely outpace program expenses, meaning the Chapter 74 programs in comprehensive high schools are revenue positive programs. You are not only adding new high-quality educational experiences to your menu of offering for students, but you are bringing in state funding that, when managed responsibly, is going to exceed the cost of running those programs, which for me is a win-win, and this is a very attractive proposition that I think could be a tremendous benefit to both our students and the taxpayers alike. I was relieved and encouraged to speak just last week to our liaison at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education when I put the question to her, and I said, listen, you know, I don't know if there are other high schools that have made a conversion from being a conventional high school to a comprehensive high school that belongs to a regional vocational consortium. Attleboro High School does not belong to a regional vocational consortium, hence they are a comprehensive high school. We do belong to a regional vocational consortium. Our liaison was enthusiastic about the proposal, and she projected that it would be very well received at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. For those of you who are following career and technical education, you may be aware that the state has used a variety of different sort of grants and incentive structures to try to drive conventional high schools to increase the quantity and quality and depth of their career and technical education offerings. The state the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education recognizes that there's a supply shortage of CTE programs in the state right now, and student demand for CTE programs exceeds supply. So while I can't speak for the department, the liaison that I work with at the department provided me with a very high level of encouragement about this vision of converting Milford High School to a comprehensive school. As James referred to earlier, a building that can support career and technical education programming is going to be more costly to build than a building that does not. So again, if I take my colleague Amy Cunningham sitting next to me, you can teach English in a room just like this. You can teach math in a room just like this. Right? You can't teach carpentry or plumbing or electrical or auto tech or advanced manufacturing in a classroom like this. Right? You need a classroom that's going to be larger, that's going to be compliant with OSHA regulations, and that's going to be able to support some pretty large high-tech equipment, and in some cases bays and spaces. So it is going to require, if we are going to embrace a vision of trying to convert Milford High School into a comprehensive school, it is going to entail a larger upfront investment on the side of the community to build a building that can support that kind of programming.
But the flip side of that you already mentioned on is that every student enrolled in that program gets $5,000 more per year.
That's correct, and my understanding is that like all other matters of sort of state funding to municipalities, it's adjusted periodically as inflation courses through the economy.
A couple things. I want to state first that I'm conceptually supportive of this. However, as a taxpayer, I can see this becoming an issue on town meeting floor. A couple of reasons. One, what you said about Chapter 74 funding being revenue positive, that's not going to include capital investment. Vocational programs are much more expensive to run because of the equipment entailed, which you've already explained. So there will be additional costs. I mean, that's not revenue positive, it's revenue positive from the perspective of a per student reimbursement or whatever it is, not capital investment. And that's also long-term capital maintenance. So it will cost the town more to run long-term, which also begs a couple of questions and concerns that you will get from the taxpaying public and you'll probably get at school committee. One, you said that something like 50% of, 50% right there, 50% of MHS graduates enter the workforce graduation. 76% of graduates from BVT matriculate to higher education, go to college. That's the highest rate in the district. If you look at the demographics of Milford, right, we represent something like 40% of BVT's, or we should, that we're in their catchment. The number of students that they take from our school is disproportionately low than every other school. And if you look at the actual composition of the students they take, it's not demographically representative of the 50% of ESL students that are at the high school right now. So as a taxpayer, we already pay for vocational school, and they're not providing the services to Milford residents and Milford students at a proportional rate. Why am I investing more so we can do it here when we should be first looking at BVT and making them honor their obligation through the charter there?
I think that is a legitimate question, and it's one that's best answered through the political process. I'm looking at this through the educational lens.
No, we're making a decision to fund here, so we have to make a commitment as to whether we want to look at this or not.
Sure.
And it's kind of like how much of this is attributed to the fact that our students are not being served by the institution that my money is going towards.
I share that concern. I understand the perspective that some may have that see this as a unnecessary expenditure.
I support it. It's necessary.
Yeah, that if policy operated differently, may not be required. But the current state of policy being what it is, I wish to advocate for the educational needs of our students. Our students, I believe, are not gaining access to the educational opportunities that they need to be successful in the workforce. If we could figure out how to help our students access those opportunities at the regional vocational high school, that would be a perfectly adequate solution. But I have yet to have a conversation in my 10 years in Milford High School principal with anyone who has given me hope to believe that we're going to be able to help our students gain access to the programming that they need and deserve at Blackstone Valley Tech.
Because right now, this represents, we're asking our constituents to pay for equipment, capital needs that are not going to be covered by that Chapter 74 reimbursement. So if you want to do a carpentry program, it's whatever equipment there, you want to do robotics, whatever it is. That equipment already exists in a vocational institution that we're paying for. We're paying twice for it, and we're not being served proportionately. And for me, that's a tough sell without first having the school committee work to address that issue with our partners at BVT.
Okay, so the reason this is in front of us is for a broad overview, not necessarily to debate whether it becomes a comprehensive high school. That is a school committee decision. I wanted to bring it here to make it everyone in this room understand. Again, it goes back to, we're going to build a school that the school department tells us these are all things on the table. That's where we're at.
You're still going to have to sell
no.
town meeting.
But this you're going to have the school department is going to have this discussion. We're going to have this discussion. I want to be totally transparent about it. Your point is very valid. Why do our students not get into Valley Tech? This has been, as long as I can remember, the last 20 or 30 years we've had this argument. So the question then becomes, do we just accept it and throw our hands up and say 50% of our students that are going directly into the workforce, we can't help them?
No, we can help them.
Or do we take an opportunity now with some kind of hybrid approach? And again, it's really, I want to bring the focus back to, we're building the school department wants. We are going to work with them. They will ultimately make the decision whether it brings CTE programming in and what the grade configuration is. But I was invited to talk to them, and I want to be able to say that we spoke about it at length at the building committee meeting, and be able to go there. Patrick.
So Josh, you go to the school committee, big presentation, you get what you want. We're now up to 6 buildings being studied in the feasibility study, right? So we have 7 through 12, 8 through 12, high school, now 7 through 12, comprehensive, 8 through 12, comprehensive, 9 through 12, comprehensive. So we're up to 6.
That's correct. That's where we're at.
That's a lot of options.
Well,
Those are the options.
you wouldn't have to do 7 and 8 comprehensive.
Well, because we know the 7 and 8 aren't comprehensive, but they're in the same building.
Same building.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I don't think there's any difference in what those are going to be.
I don't know.
Okay, so then we have 4 choices.
Yes.
4 choices if you want to look at it. Either way, it's
It may sound like a lot, but it's not. When you start shaking at the numbers and the scope, like you're already saying. The architects are used to that.
Josh, you're still on.
That's all I have, Mr. Bruce.
All right.
That's that.
Drop the mic.
If I can add,
James.
some color. He's absolutely right. It's a school building committee. I was part of a project that was, that failed because really half of it came down to the regional agreement that was written in 1963.
70s for us, yeah.
Yeah, and nobody's updated, and the way it was written, everyone has to agree on whatever change that needs to happen. So if there's one school or a city or town that it particularly benefits more than others, why would they agree to any change? And so there's reasons why we're not, that's part one, it's regional agreement. Part two is I don't know that as a region, I don't know how much the district has say over the admittance policy of the regional school
There's
district.
13 schools in the
Yeah, but
district?
every other town.
13, so 7 votes tells you what's going to happen.
Every other town's on board with changing it except for Milford. So Milford does have significant say as the largest town in the catchment.
Al?
I think we have a fundamental decision here. Mitch, what you're saying theoretically is the right thing. When I grew up, you went to BVT if you wanted to be a tradesperson. You went to Milford High if you're hoping to go to college. Now we look and say, what was it, 70-some% of the BVT grads go to college?
About 76.
And 0% of the Milford High people who wanted to be a tradesman get trade education?
I'm not
Close.
I'm not sure that 0%.
I don't think it's
Well, no, but you're saying 50% don't get in. Of that 50%, none.
I think that we have many students who decline to apply to Blackstone Valley Tech because the admissions practices at Blackstone Valley Tech are very well known within the community. Our counselors at Stacy are very
Define
direct
well
with us.
known. What does
Josh,
that mean?
I've said all along,
Selective admissions.
my father came to this country. If you put him in an organic chemistry class, he wouldn't do well. Give the man a tool, and he was an artist. He'd never get into BVT because he wouldn't be in the top 10 or 15% academically of the class. So, Mitch, I agree with you. I'd love to say we can change it, but there's 13 towns, and changes have never gone through easy, especially where BVT likes being a model of having the highest scores and the highest graduation rates into college.
right.
The issue we're going to have is reality. If we want to help, maybe it's not 50%, Josh, but whatever percentage of kids who want trade education who can't get into BVT, we got to deal with, do we fund it or not?
No, I support the funding. It's more just we have to sell this to the townspeople as a responsible use of taxpayer money.
I mean, not to get into this because I think it's school committee at the end of the day, but I'm also wondering, my understanding based on what you can do and get into at BVT if we're not almost talking about somebody that's totally different? I mean, from my understanding, the carpentry, the true trade is not really something that's pushed at BVT. There may be a few people that come out of there, but
Valid point, Joe.
Being a
Right.
person that's in the Lions Club, we gave money as scholarships to certain people and trying to find those people because they were trade people that we were looking to do. Couldn't find anybody that wanted to go in and become a plumber when they graduated. They were all going somewhere else. So I think you're talking about, to a large extent, people that aren't being served at BVT regardless of whether they could get in or not.
And to that,
But by charter, they should be served.
Well, I'm not saying that, but I don't know how you go back on that.
Honestly, you can see
It's
that
a problem.
If you just walk the corridors, you can see it.
Okay.
I think to that point, it also may be helpful for folks to understand that what the department has made clear to me is that there are only certain conditions under which they will fund CTE programs through Chapter 74 at a local high school that are concurrently funded at the regional vocational technical high school. I believe it's a two-part test. The first of which is that you need to demonstrate that you have student demand for the program at scale. And that secondly, that the local vocational technical high school is not producing graduates at a replenishment rate equivalent to what the labor market requires. So we already have worked with our colleagues at Mass Hire Central in Worcester. They've already identified the priority areas in the regional labor market that are undersupplied, and they are the construction trades, biomedical science, information technology, and advanced manufacturing. These are the 4 priority economic zones that Mass Hire has identified. And so in terms of the types of program that we would be looking at, for example, construction trades would include carpentry, electrical, and plumbing, right? So that's a cluster that has, multiple disciplines within it.
Okay.
Is there anything in the charter that prohibits us from doing that, though, offering the same programming that BVT's offering?
I don't know.
So, I mean, like, DESE would have to review that, right?
Yes. I can tell you traditionally.
Because I know there is, because, I mean, we deal with the same issue in Holding. So, I mean, like, shouldn't we look at that before we pitch this whole thing?
Well, I know that part of the process of applying for Chapter 74 funding for a school like ours is there's a requirement that we engage in a consultation with Blackstone Valley Tech prior to applying for any Chapter 74 programs. The department looks most favorably upon applications where the regional vocational school voices support for the local high school's request, but their support is not required for funding.
I want to move along. The reason again for bringing this is we need to be able to deal with student enrollment, grade configuration, those sorts of things. The school department is on a short time frame to get that done. I wanted total transparency. I wanted Josh and Kevin to have an opportunity to explain their vision here for whoever's watching it. It will be repeated next Thursday night, September 5th. I want to be able to, now I can go to the meeting, say we've had this discussion, and the complications are understood, and there are complications, but should we be looking at, out of Patrick's 4 options, 7 through 12, 8 through 12, 9 through 12, CTE being a separate topic? There's your real 4 options. So now I think everyone's prepared. School department people that are here are prepared to go to their full committee next week, and then we'll see where we come up. James.
One quick point. We have project experience. We've had 2 projects. Durfee and Waltham High School just opened up today. Both were part of a regional agreement, and both are comprehensive. Historically, prior to your conversation last week, again, we are in a sea change of needing more trades. Historically, their response has been, if a program is at the regional school, then you cannot repeat it. You can do something else. So let's say there's 40 programs, that's 40 Chapter 74 programs. You can do one, and they only have 18. You can do the other 22. So that's a known. We've seen that in practice. That's been happening. So
We had a prior hotel and hospitality program that was a Chapter 74 that was not available.
There you go.
it ended up dying on the vine during the COVID years.
So that is a known actual option that's been practiced, and this is relatively new. That sounds like it's very promising as well, to where, say that they have carpentry at BBT, but they're not meeting the workforce. That'd be great if we could also have carpentry.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, in my own mind, I have like this 2-hour meeting window, and we got 7 minutes to go. So, what's left is new business. Any new business?
I just had one other topic that,
Go ahead, Joe.
as we were talking about and what's reimbursed and not, and it came to mind in terms of, especially if we go down the path of rehabbing the existing high school, is to look at, and this is what I had sent when I had sent out questions about central office, which has already been said, that's not going to get reimbursed. Are there other things? I know there are other things in that high school that are not going to get reimbursed. I wasn't sure about the daycare or not. But to me, it would look like it would be important to know those, because it would also seem like there's a possibility that all of those programs could come out of the high school prior to us doing this, which would free up space in there, which would allow a contract to have additional space inside the high school to perhaps end up with a quicker turnaround, which is money, and also he'll be able to have access to more of the facility, which will also lower the cost. So, I mean, if that required, and I have no idea what the town has for additional buildings or not, or whether that requires us to perhaps build a much easier building to move out other programs, that may be a cost-effective move, because we're not going to get reimbursed for those things anyways.
Valid point, and that gets thoroughly dealt with during feasibility study. We have to get there. Okay. No new business, no old business. I just want to mention, I don't think anybody had old business. The only thing I want to comment on is, as far as meeting schedules are concerned, I had asked everybody to rank the days of their week in the order of preference, and Wednesday won by far. Friday lost by far, not surprisingly. So we're going to be looking at Wednesdays as a result of, it fits the vast majority of people's meetings. We'll probably do it here, although if we become overcrowded, we can look elsewhere, probably TRC, once the weather cools off, because it's not air conditioned.
I think the Death Star's back operational is my sense.
Okay, so we can go there, but I'll be looking for, there were a couple Wednesdays that didn't work for a couple people. I will, through Melissa, get to everybody, but we should be planning on once a month on a Wednesday going forward. Anything else?
Should we request this room on a monthly basis so there's no conflict?
You can, but there may be other
I'll work it out with you, because I'm certainly not afraid to go to TRC.
Yeah.
And in
If you
some
go 1 hour,
respects, it actually works better.
This 2-hour may be a problem.
TRC actually works better in some respects, but not when it's not air conditioned.
The meeting might go quicker.
So, all right, the meetings will go quicker. So, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion, Mitch. Mike, second. All those in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye, aye, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Great meeting, I thought.